Welcome to Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go. I'm your host, Tara, and the founder of the blog Travel with TMc, which is where this adventure all started. Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, is a fun and quirky show that delves into everything travel and adventure, whether it's from the road, in the air, and in between here and there. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen so that you don't miss notifications for new episodes. This season, we cover a variety of travel topics. It's my hope that you'll find one or many that make you say, hey, that's me, I travel that way, or that they inspire you to try something new. This week on Traveling Through Life, a podcast on the go, we meet Katie and Dan from Katie and Dan in a Van. They discuss their love of road trips and excitement for visiting national parks and off-the-beaten-path countries. From van life safety tips to revealing what life is like as digital nomads in both the YouTube and tech industries, this duo demonstrates their range and breadth of nomadic knowledge. Katie and Dan also provide thoughtful insights into the impact of travel on local communities and how to be a superb travel partner. Stay tuned for the most fantastic gift idea for travelers at the end of the episode. Okay, let's dive in. Welcome, guys. I'm so pumped to have you on the show as one of the first guests. So good to have you here.
Thanks so much for having us.
It's great to be here.
So for those of you who maybe don't follow either of us on socials, Katie and I actually crossed paths pre-pandemic. I think it was at a Ladies Who Launch event in KW. Is that right?
Yeah. It was a networking event.
Yeah. And then it wasn't until like years later that we actually met in person.
Yeah.
Like properly met, I suppose I should say. But I had reached out on Instagram. We met. And then you guys actually helped me with like looking for my van and then part of the build process. So we've had a few different interactions over the years that
we go way back.
Yeah, van camping together for my first time. That was awesome. And then Spanish lessons as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've got lots of crisscross there. I'm so happy to have you guys on the show. You're both really lovely, like generous, friendly people. And so I'm happy to be able to share your story with everybody who's listening.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having us. We're really excited to talk about travel, living in the van, working from the van. So, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, tell us a bit about yourselves, who you are, what you do, what kind of travel you enjoy, and where you're calling in from today.
Yeah. So we are currently in Yuma, Arizona. We just spent some time in Baja, California, Mexico, which was amazing. But we are now starting our journey back to Kitchener, Ontario, which is where we live. And we've been traveling in our self-converted camper van, which we converted during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful. If anybody hasn't seen it, you have to check out their
YouTube.
You
get a little taste of it in our background here. But yeah, I don't know. What would you say is our preferred kind of travel?
I mean, we've been road tripping for a long time before we had this van. We used to borrow my parents' minivan, and we traveled all around Canada in that.
I love that.
So we've been road tripping for a long time.
And camping.
And camping, of course. I never really did a lot of camping growing up. That was a big thing that Katie's family did.
Yeah.
So it was when I met Katie that I kind of got introduced to that.
Mm-hmm.
Having a van is kind of a camper van is the perfect combination of the two.
Yeah. I feel like there's always one person in the relationship who like gets the other one to cross over to the van life side.
Yeah.
I was so excited about van life for a really long time. Like I was big into watching van life YouTubers. And so for like many years, I would like say to Dan, like, oh, we should get a van one day. And, you know, at first I think he was a little hesitant, like, oh, are you sure? Like, that seems like a big commitment, especially because I was very excited about doing our own conversion. And neither of us had a lot of DIY experience. But then, I don't know, just with being in lockdown, not having a lot of other like travel opportunities and wanting to do more local road trips and camping and stuff, I think we both kind of felt inspired to
it was just the right time. Like it was just a good opportunity, and it just kind of all worked out perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
As life does. That's awesome. I want to go back in time a little bit. I'm curious to know, you've
kind of mentioned road trips and camping growing up there. I'd love to know either the first trip you guys took as individuals or with your families or together. Like, where did the travel bug come from for each of you?
Oh man. I think for me, so growing up, like Dan mentioned, my family did a lot of camping. And so all of my family vacations or like trips as a kid were around Ontario, which was great. Like I enjoy camping. I got to see a lot of like beautiful nature that way. But I think by the time I got to be a teenager, I really felt this travel bug out of like, oh, like I haven't seen a lot of the world. I want to get out there. And I've always been like interested in history and geography. So I would just like look at like Google Maps and like see all the like different places I could go and like dream of like, oh, if I went to like this part of Europe, look at all the different countries I could get to if I was there. And I was like just very intrigued by it. So I think for me, the desire to travel came out of curiosity to like learn more about the world and this feeling of like, there's so much out there and I like haven't seen it yet. So that kind of like got me inspired to start traveling once I was a bit older and could, you know, afford to go on my own trips. But they did a little bit more traveling as a kid.
Yeah, like I would say, I feel like I inherited the travel bug from
I
my
love
grandparents on both sides.
Yeah.
My Oma, my dad's mom, was worked for the airlines, worked for Air Canada, and
I don't think I knew this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adopt me.
I know. She used to have really good benefits. So my grandparents would travel and like, and when she was still working before she retired, there was, we would do family trips and it was a really awesome perk to have. And then on my other side, on my mom's side, my Opa on that side, well, both my grandparents on that side were big RVers and they did, they had a big Winnebago for a lot of years, and then they downsized to a smaller road trek that they drove.
So they were van life
all through Canada.
They were the OG van lifers. I love it.
They paved the way,
Yeah, and so we love like looking at old photos of them at like the Grand Canyon and like all these national parks that we like go to now.
Yes.
Oma
it's
and Opa
crazy to think about, my Oma and Opa in like the 80s and 90s going to all these national parks. They have photos of, of big sites at national parks, and there's way fewer people back then than there are today
we see now.
when we go there.
That's so cool. That must really shape the conversations that you guys can bring from your experiences back to your family then as well, and how you guys interact around and about travel as a family.
Yeah, I think everybody's got their own stories. And for me, what's been like really special to see is like, I feel like I've gotten to have more travel experiences almost on the same timeline that my parents have. So as a kid, like I was saying, we would do a lot of local travel because it wasn't necessarily like accessible to us as a family to be like flying all over the place. But now that like I'm older, my parents, obviously older too, like they do a lot more traveling than they used to as well. So now I've also been able to see my parents like go on a safari in Kenya or like come and visit us in Spain and, all of those things. So I feel like in both of our families, there's a lot of like excitement about travel, which is fun.
Like part of why we started the YouTube channel and the Instagram, Katie and Dan in a Van, was to share it with our family so that they could see a little summary of what we were doing. And and like they've been really supportive. I don't know. They think we're a little crazy for driving to Mexico and stuff like that. But they
like to follow along.
They're interested. They're our number one fan, I would say.
I love it. That's so cool. And going forward, and I guess in the present time for you guys with travel, how do you choose where to travel to? I know part of it in the past has been work directed a little bit, but you guys, you've got that beautiful wall behind you with the postcards. I don't know if you want to talk about that and how that ties in as well.
Yeah, so I feel like there's all kinds of different like initial motivations for different trips that we've been on. So you mentioned work. When we went to Spain and Portugal last year, that was motivated by I had been asked to go and film a course with this company called Domestica about like how to start a YouTube channel, and their offices are in Madrid. So that's kind of what brought us to Spain. And anytime we have an opportunity for a trip, we think, how can we extend this and see more? Because it feels like if you're going out of your way to fly somewhere, let's make it worthwhile, right? Like see as much as we can see while we're there. So that invitation to film a course in Spain turned into a 2-month trip, taking trains around Spain and Portugal, which we really, really enjoyed. And yeah, in terms of other like motivations for travel, we really love visiting national parks.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it was on our first van trip into the US when we really kind of caught the national park bug, and that's the postcards that we collect on the side of our van. We're doing it the authentic way and buying a postcard when we're in the national park from the shop there. I don't know. It's not, we haven't really stated a goal to see every national park. There are some in the US that are extremely hard to get to. But whenever possible, we try and plan a route that includes stopping in at one we haven't been to yet.
Yeah, and you guys also like kind of off the beaten track travel a bit too, because you've spent some time in Eastern Europe and some other places that not everybody goes to on their first, second, or third trip. Like, do you want to share a little bit about that?
I think it came partially, like when we were students, we were traveling on the cheap, and that meant that we were limited in some ways with where we could go. And some, not all, but some of the really, really popular travel destinations like Paris or whatever tend to be kind of expensive. So I think that's maybe where it started, that we thought we would try and go to some lesser visited places because it was
cost savings.
Yeah, more cost effective.
But I think as time has gone on, like we've really realized, like I truly believe every place has something interesting about it, like even if it's not, you know, showing up on your Instagram feed all the time. So I think we try to take opportunities to check out places that like you wouldn't often think of going to. And also I think we often tell ourselves like, you know, like some of these standard like places that kind of everybody goes to, like we will have a chance to do that. Like when, you know, we wouldn't be intimidated to go to Paris, for example, in our 60s or 70s. Like we could you know, do that at some point. But maybe now when we're feeling more like young and adventurous, like, yeah, let's do a road trip through like Bosnia and Herzegovina and Albania and like see some of these more like off the beaten path places. But I think even as we go to those places that feel intimidating, you kind of realize like they're maybe not as like scary as people think. That's definitely what I've come to think driving through Mexico in particular. Like a lot of fuss was made about driving through Baja, and then you realize, you know, like people live in all of these places. It's not like they're, you know, inherently like scary or something like that. So
Right. Yeah. And for anybody who hasn't seen their YouTube channel, Katie and Dan in a Van, these guys are also huge history buffs. And I learn so much every time I watch. I love what you guys put out. So if anybody likes history as well as the van life or the international travel, you have to watch their episodes. They're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. We love learning about the history of the places.
I do think the Roman Empire is our Roman Empire.
For real.
I love it. And do you guys have any travel traditions that you've either created together or you've brought in from like previous travels that you've done and incorporated into something that you do as a couple?
Well, I think definitely buying our postcards. That's one of our like most well-kept traditions.
Yeah, I don't know what other traditions. I would say like I think we generally have a mindset about trying to do some things that are off the beaten path or trying to really experience the places we go to in at least slightly like a local. Of course, you know, we're not moving there. We'll never have a truly local experience.
Right.
But you know, people talk about slow travel, and that resonates with me a little bit. Like it's not about checking a country off a list, and it's more about trying to experience the culture, trying to learn something while you're there. That's I would say that's kind of our approach a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? That makes me think, one, we've never really framed this as a tradition, but it's something that we do whenever we travel to a new country. Like when we go back to the Airbnb to relax or whatever, we watch like educational YouTube videos about the history of that country. Like that sounds so dorky.
Or before we even go.
Or before we go. Yeah, definitely before we go.
We'll, like trying to learn the history.
Like look up like the history of, you know, Montenegro and like try to learn about, you know, what the politics of the place are, like what, you know, how it was founded, how the borders were established, the language, the, you know, food, whatever. Just so that we can like leave feeling like we've learned something more about that place. And obviously you could do that stuff without traveling there, but I think if you are going to go somewhere, you want to know a little bit more about it.
You almost can take more of it in if you understand like
Yeah.
the context of the place you're in.
Yeah.
Like I think traveling around Canada and the US, it's been learning the indigenous histories of each area that we visit.
Yeah.
And trying to understand some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think you almost owe it to the place you're visiting to try and learn at least a little bit about it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so well said, guys. I absolutely love that. The next questions I have for you are some of my favorites because you guys know, but for those of you listening that don't know, before I got the travel bug, my first love was actually words, and it still is in many ways, but I feel like you guys will appreciate these questions because both of you speak other languages, and I'd love to know which ones you speak and how you came to know them. And then Katie, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you prep for Mexico, because I know that that's been a part of your all of that kind of stuff.
Sí. Quizás puedo intentar hablar español para ti. Yo hablo español un poco y he estado aprendiendo español por un año antes ir a Mexico. I don't know if that's quite right, but I started learning Spanish a year in advance of this van life trip to Mexico. People say like you can travel through Baja just speaking English, and I do think that's true. You could do it with even more basic
just like
Spanish
memorize 10 phrases or something like that could get you pretty far.
But I've always like had I've had a goal of learning another language for a really long time. I've always really admired people who are bilingual. It just seems like a superpower to me. So I was like, okay, this time like I have a motivation, like I have a reason to really try, and like I have like a clear practical application to use this in. So that really like made me more dedicated to it. So yeah, I learned Spanish so that we could travel through Mexico in our van a little bit easier, and it's been very fun.
So impressed by you, because I have to like, from the teacher in me is like, oh my god, this girl does her homework. Your discipline is so much better than mine. I give you kudos. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, it's definitely been like my kind of primary hobby outside of work for the past year. Like I haven't necessarily been as dedicated to it at every single moment. It ebbs and flows, but for a lot of the past year, like I'd spent somewhere between like 30 minutes to an hour each day studying, watching Spanish Netflix or like a lot of YouTube in Spanish, listening to Spanish podcasts, and taking like different classes online. So I did like group classes on Lingoda for a while. And then more recently, I've been doing just conversation practice on this platform called italki, which is just like, one-on-one speaking with a native speaker, which has helped a lot. And I even got to do some in-person Spanish classes in Mexico, which was fun.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more about that when you guys get home. And then Dan, you also speak another language too?
Well, I don't know about that. That's general. I learned French in school. I did French immersion, so I feel like that gave me a pretty strong basis. I feel like you almost take that for granted because I started with immersion in grade 1. So when you're young, it comes pretty naturally. I don't know. It's kind of a different process than what Katie went through. And I do feel like I should try to keep my French active. I haven't been very good about that. I think it would.
But I have to say though, when like we did the Spanish lessons with the three of us, like the French was coming out, the Spanish, like you guys killed it. I don't know. You both need to give yourselves credit. I think you do well.
Oh, gracias.
You know what? I do think every language you learn makes it a little bit easier to learn the next. Like even just having a little bit of French helps you learn Spanish or whatever.
Yeah. And I really feel like, at least in like adulthood, especially like you mentioned, like the, dedication and discipline required. Like I think language learning is kind of a skill of its own. And once you know how to do that, the routines you can put in place, like even the methods for like, being able to study on your own, you can apply that in like different scenarios. And like for me, having a bit of, elementary school and high school French, that helped, give me a framework for learning Spanish. And now that I've done this, I'm kind of like, should I try to learn another language? But a part of me is like, oh, but my Spanish, I really want to, I don't want to like let it degrade, because I'm trying to learn something else. That's my like concern now. But yeah.
Well, the great thing for both of you guys is that Waterloo region is the fourth biggest area for immigration in Canada after Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. So there's people from everywhere in our region for you to be able to practice with. And you'll keep it going. I know you will.
Yeah, exactly. Just watch me walking into like La Tienda Latina. I'm going to be ready to chat them up when we get back. At least I need to find somebody who will talk to me in Spanish now that I won't have the everyday practice.
Nice. I love it. I love it. And from any of the languages that you guys know, do you have any favorite words or phrases, or is there something that is just stuck in your head as like really bizarre even?
Oh, I don't know. I feel like I don't have anything like flashy or fun to share because my Spanish is so practical. I'm like, okay, what do I use most often? Tiene una manguera, because we try to fill with water for our van.
The hose. Manguera is hose.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not very exciting. I don't know.
So we took German 101 together in university.
Yeah, we did.
And I have a little bit more German than Katie has because I had a little bit of
school
previous experience.
Yeah.
But it's funny what sticks with you. We were in different groups, but was it your group or mine that did a group?
Überraschungsparty?
Yes.
Yeah.
A surprise party is all one word, Überraschungsparty.
Yeah.
In German.
Nice.
And
that's a fun word.
It's a fun word. And it's funny, like, and anytime we see something German and Überraschungs come up.
Yeah, we always remember
it just
what that is. Yeah.
Fun to say.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Another topic I'm really curious to hear people's perspectives and opinions on, and I think this will especially be interesting with the two of you, is travel and technology. So like, how has technology changed the way you travel? I know we have a small age difference between the three of us. Like when I started traveling, Instagram wasn't really a thing. Blogs were like, I don't know, in the corners of the internet, like they weren't, you know what I mean? YouTube wasn't around, but so it wasn't a huge part of how I traveled or the way I shared things, but how has it been a part of like your travel journey?
I feel like going back to like doing road trips with my family and stuff, like I have definitely noticed the change. Like I remember printing maps on MapQuest, or my dad would go into CAA and get these things called triptychs, which were kind of like printed out directions for how to get from A to B. They were like custom. And now, of course, we use Google Maps and, download a map ahead of time. That's a hot tip if you're ever traveling somewhere and may not have the internet. You can download an offline map. I don't know. I think it can be intimidating to embrace something new, embrace some new technology that you haven't tried before and try it out on a trip. You're kind of feeling some stress about the trip, but I don't know. I feel like every time we've tried something new, like downloading an offline translator or something like that, it's almost always helpful in some situation. It just makes it smoother.
Yeah, I think in so many ways, like a lot of this tech has made travel way more accessible than it once was. Like so much easier to find your way places. Like literally just the other day, we were like, wow, Google Maps. Like we're so like grateful for that because
how do we get anywhere? Yeah, Google Maps?
Especially with like road tripping, it's so helpful. Translators, like you said,
and just finding interesting places on Google Maps and stuff too.
Yeah, or like for us,
do you guys do that for filming? Do you like check the map beforehand for like topographical things with your drone? Because you're tossing up a drone these days.
We are. That's a good idea. We've never done that. I feel like we rely a lot on Google reviews for like places we might want to go,
or checking the satellite view on Google Maps.
Yeah,
is there going to be enough
spots?
Yeah, a good camping spot is
One thing that we check is there going to be a height restriction for getting into certain places?
On Google Street View.
Yeah. Because our van is tall.
That's a big problem. Like in big cities, you need to like look for parking. And not only that, you need like street parking or something that doesn't have a
not in a parking garage.
Not a
basically.
parking garage.
No
yeah.
ceiling. Yeah.
Or
that's
when they're
something
the
we do.
open parking lots, but they have the bar to get you in there. That drives
Yeah.
me nuts.
I know.
So down
yeah.
in Mexico, a lot of the parking is covered with little canopies just to keep the cars at all cool during the hot summers and stuff.
Yeah. So you have to
So
watch out for that
there's
too.
height hazards everywhere.
Yeah. But I actually think one of the biggest sort of tech things that we've embraced that has changed the game for our travel is Starlink, which is actually how we're connecting to you right now. So we have satellite
Not
internet.
sponsored, but they're welcome to.
Exactly. Yeah, so we would really not be able to like work from our van whatsoever if we didn't have our satellite internet, especially when we were in Mexico, because there's not reliable cell service throughout the Baja Peninsula. So that's been a tech thing that's definitely changed the game travel-wise for us.
And people that we meet that have been doing this for a while, like RVing or doing van life for a while, they really talk about like before Starlink, after Starlink, and how like the game just completely changed. It opened it up to so many more people like us
that are working remotely,
work on the van and need the internet to do our jobs.
Yeah.
Definitely. I want to circle back to the working remotely, but before we do that, you already mentioned the YouTube channel where you share your travels. Other than YouTube, are there ways that you document your travels? Because I feel like naturally you're both inclined to document and preserve memories and share them. What else do you like to do?
That's funny.
If anything else. That is a lot of work. Maybe there's not time for anything else.
Something that we started doing on our more recent trips is taking film photos.
Nice.
Which is kind of fun. So I got my grandma kind of gave it to me, her old film camera. And so that was kind of I don't know, I was always curious about experimenting with film photography a little bit because it's fun. You can't review your photo right away after you take it. You want to be really intentional because you'll take one, whereas on my phone, I take like 20 photos for every one I'm going to actually use. So that's been a fun, like slower, more intentional way of documenting some of our like most special travel memories. And every now and then, especially on this trip, I've been trying to journal a little bit, like in Spanish, about what we've been doing as like a language learning exercise. So
and a recording of a memory too, like two birds, one stone.
Exactly. Yeah.
Love it. That's so cool. Do you think you'll try and develop the photos on your own as well, or do you think you'll?
I've got a place in downtown Kitchener, Photo Master, where I go and get them developed, and that's like a great like family business. They're really good.
Oh, I love it. I didn't know about that, so thank you for mentioning that. Last question about travel and tech. Do you think that you could survive traveling without data, without the internet? Forget if you're not, let's say you're not working while you're traveling.
Just vacation.
Like a pure trip, pure fun.
Yeah.
Like I would say our personalities, we're both organized type A kind of people. And so our tendency is to plan stuff out. And, I feel like we are trying to actively push against that and try to be more spontaneous.
We're trying so hard to be chill.
Yeah, we're trying to be chill. It's hard. I think we could do it, but it's just not our preference.
Yeah.
And, I do think it's kept us out of some hairy situations. Like we know of people who drive down a road and then there's
it's stuck.
a clearance bar and they're stuck or whatever, right? Like
because they didn't look at satellite view beforehand like we did,
Or we're checking, how far is it to the next gas station and where are there places to fill with fresh water, right?
Yeah.
So it saves us some headache. It saves us some sticky situations.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I think we would be fine.
Maybe we should challenge ourselves to do that, but would we enjoy it? I don't know. I feel like everybody has like a different travel personality of like how much they, want to plan ahead and like, manage their trip versus just like take it as it comes. And I don't know. Maybe we need to get out of our comfort zone, but we're normally planners. We like to have all of the tools and resources at our disposal to make sure like, we can handle the situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that question because everybody's answer is so different on it.
Yeah, maybe if we like made ourselves triptychs beforehand and like planned out everything and wrote on paper, this is a place where you can fill with fresh water. They have a hose. This is a place where you can drive and there's no overhead clearance. Then we can go without technology if we planned it ahead.
Yeah.
I think about stuff like that. Like my parents took us to Europe when I was 14. We did 6.5 weeks. For context, they have 4 children. So it was one heck of a trip. But this was back in 2022 or 2002.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the internet was around at that point. But I remember my mom having a backpack full of paper, like bookings, because it wasn't all like she would have emailed places directly. We stayed in a convent. That was, I don't even know how they had internet. Like, I don't know how that got hooked up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like, she had
Yeah.
the travel guide books with us. And yes, it's definitely more efficient to have the tech, but it's also a lot less weight to carry around too. Like, it's crazy the differences with it.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. How has travel impacted your life? I know a lot of us talked about how travel impacts us on a personal level. I'm curious to know how that's been for you guys, and then I have kind of follow up to that as well.
I think for me, one of the biggest impacts personally of traveling has been feeling like more confident or sure of myself. Like there's a lot of times when you're like going to new places that you're going to come across difficult situations or challenges like language barriers or navigating a new transit system or, even like, booking your own hotel for the first time. All of these things are big milestones that you kind of go through as like a young adult when you start traveling on your own. And I think doing all of that stuff has made me feel really like, oh yeah, I can do this. Like I can like take care of myself in a foreign country. I can like navigate the London Underground, or I can like, communicate with locals in a small town in Mexico. Like all those things are like very much, it feels like, there should be like a pop-up on the screen of my life, like achievement unlocked.
Yeah.
Like this makes me feel very like satisfied, and like it just kind of adds to that feeling of like, oh yeah, like, I can do this. It really, I think, increases your confidence to basically do things that are outside of your comfort zone, but then like achieve them.
Awesome. Yeah. What about you, Dan?
Well, I think traveling can open you up to just people who like different cultures and different social norms. And I don't know, when you first travel in those first days in a new country, you're observing everything that's different than how you do it back home. And I think there's a natural inclination to think different bad or whatever, and to not really understand it, to not get it. But then once you're spending more time in that country, trying to learn more about the history, trying to learn more about the people, trying to maybe even meet some local people, then you can understand a little bit more that just because something's different, just because, culturally or the social norms are different, doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, and you can kind of come to understand it a little bit more.
And then to some extent even makes you start thinking more about your own culture that you come from, and
exactly
give you more perspective around like, oh, maybe actually the way we do it is weird.
Yeah, like
that perspective piece.
Just the ability to like question your own society or the things that you grew up with that seemed so normal that you never ever thought about.
Yeah.
You can start to think about that and unpack it a little more.
Yeah. And ultimately, I think it just like gives you like empathy for more people and more situations. And not that you by any means need to travel to achieve that, but I think like in a really tangible way, it makes you realize like, yeah, like, I don't know, especially in places that are often like demonized by our media in like Canada and the US that seem so scary, kind of like I was saying before. You go to these places and you're like, oh, like there's just normal people living here. Like it's not so strange or different. So yeah, it's like a big perspective shifter that way.
I think it's important to underscore, like, you don't have to travel to be an informed person or anything like that, and I know that being able to travel is a privilege that not everyone has. Not everyone can,
their passport doesn't let them get to different places.
Exactly.
Whatever,
So I don't think that there's anything like, travel is awesome, and I'm really glad we're able to do it. But there's nothing like
magical.
There's nothing magical, or it's not something that just inherently makes you a better person to have traveled more.
So true. I think if anything, sometimes it can reveal like the flaws that we have in ourselves and the ways that we can become better. Maybe like you talk about things that we reflect on back home that we might not consider because they're our norm, but also there are things about like ourselves. I don't know about you guys. Definitely has been the case for me. But Katie, the point that you made about a place you know, how the media portrays some places. You guys were just in Mexico. I was just in Colombia last week. And the like first question everybody has asked me is it safe to go there? And I'm like, I feel less safe in Texas than I do anywhere in the world. And I'm serious when I say that, you know, everybody in Colombia was so friendly, so helpful. I didn't feel unsafe once.
Yeah.
Texas is another story. But yeah, it's when you get the firsthand experience, it definitely helps.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any surprises that you've experienced about a place? Maybe there was something that you anticipated or expected and it was completely different, or about yourself, maybe how you reacted in a situation, or something that you ended up enjoying that you didn't plan to or anticipate?
That's a good question. Travel surprises. I don't know. Maybe like we're such type A planners that we haven't come across that many because we look into things so in depth before we go there. Does anything come to mind for you?
I don't think so. I don't know.
Not that we've like fully anticipated just every experience we've had, but I don't know.
I feel like every trip we go on, there's always things that are different than what you expected. I don't know. It's often like the little things that you hadn't ever thought about.
Yeah.
That surprise you the most.
I know for me, like as I've gotten older, I've considered more about not only the benefits or the experiences that I get from travel, but also the impact that I leave on other places, whether it's while I'm there or after I leave as well. Is that something that you guys think about or has come to mind in your travels?
The impact of like us as well as other travelers on the places that we go to. Yeah. I think we've been thinking about that more on this last trip to Mexico because like it is such Baja is a very popular place for van lifers in particular to go. And so I think we've been considering more the implications of like almost van lifers as a community and what the impact of that is on Baja and like what we can do to, I don't know, try to maybe like improve the perception of van lifers or help like I don't know, just make it like a positive contribution to the community. So one way that I think like we were in a very small part like able to do that, we went to this van life meetup that was in near the city La Paz, and something that this van life meetup was like very focused on was like contributions to local organizations. So for example, they did like a fundraiser for like the local like ambulances as part of this van life meetup. There also was a drag show, which was a fundraiser for like the local LGBTQ plus organization. So I really appreciated that like the organizers of that event, like knowing that, okay, these are all basically like, you know, foreigners that are coming and like using this space, you know, that is obviously like belongs to these locals. Like what can we do to try to like give back? Yeah, I appreciated the focus on that. And they also, you know, really encourage everybody like leave every place that you go like more beautiful than it was when you got there. Pick up garbage that you come across. Obviously don't leave any behind. Like those kind of like leave no trace practices are
especially
really important. So yeah, so I think that's something that we've been
I think we're always we're really aware of this and always trying to find new ways to have more of a positive impact on the places we visit. And it's something that we're really keenly aware. I mean, I think we think a lot about the carbon that we burn to get down to Mexico and you know, try and
the impact that travelers have on like local economies and how that can be like positive and negative.
Or negative.
And, you know, what can we do to try to make it more positive, you know?
That you might be pricing out locals by staying at Airbnbs or gentrifying a city.
Yeah.
I think about this so much.
Yeah, exactly. Or just the ability to go to like local businesses and try to like, you know, the money that you are spending there, which is supposedly the big positive impact we can make. How can we spend it with people that will actually keep it in the community? And, you know,
Yeah, definitely. The last question I have about travel impact is how has travel impacted your career or vice versa? Because you guys as digital nomads, not all the time, because I know that your base is in Waterloo region, but there's got to be a correlation there between decisions that you've made in life to be able to incorporate travel in. So what's that been like for you guys?
I feel like I really stumbled into the whole like digital nomad thing in a way, though for many years it's been like a goal of mine to have like a location independent job, even back in like, I don't know, 2016, 2017. I was thinking about that as a university student, you know, like I really wanted to have a fully online career so that I could travel, because I've just always been like excited about the idea of travel. And after I graduated university, I started out my career as a freelance videographer. So that was all in-person local jobs. But then, of course, the pandemic happened and I had to shift my services to be completely online and remote, which obviously at the time was a challenge, but only, you know, in retrospect, I know that it was kind of this blessing in disguise, which obviously, you know, we all wish the pandemic just didn't happen. It was terrible. Yeah. But like that particular aspect of it ended up opening up this potential for me to have this fully online career, which now allows me to travel while I'm working, which if I would have stayed in my kind of path as like a videographer, that's very much like you have to be in person to film stuff. So, you know, now doing what I do as a content creator and with my fully remote social media marketing agency, I'm, you know, now that things have opened up, I'm able to travel. So yeah, it didn't like necessarily happen by design, but now I'm just in this fortunate place where my career allows me to travel, which I really appreciate.
Right. And then you've got some flexibility as well. Yeah.
Exactly. And again, it was related to the pandemic. Like when the pandemic hit, that's when my work became a lot more flexible about where we could work from. I work at a tech company. Mm-hmm. So I think it felt sort of like a natural decision we wanted to travel, especially because we had been traveling when we could before the pandemic. Yeah. And, you know, we wanted to travel more. The pandemic obviously
made us want to travel even more because we were stuck at home for a long time.
Yeah. And so like I really feel like we kind of fell pretty naturally into van life.
Yeah.
Our story is that there was somebody locally who was starting to convert a van and then needed to
sell it.
Yeah. I don't know the exact circumstances, if he lost his job during the pandemic or whatever, but was kind of looking to cash out of that side project. And so we bought this van, which
Vanji.
Vanji, yeah. In October of 2020.
And it was just partially converted. There was a lot of work that we needed to do.
Yeah.
There was at least a little bit of a start.
Yeah.
So it just felt like the right opportunity at the right time. Katie was super keen on it, and I was convinced.
Yeah. Now we've got to a place where like Dan is at least as enthusiastic or maybe even more enthusiastic about van life than I am. So
yeah, can't believe it.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys do when you're traveling that you don't do while you're at home? Like Katie, you and I have had conversations about this when we've been working together, where I've like made observations about how it feels like more strangers talk to each other when I'm in different countries, and specifically Ireland, but just in general. But I also sometimes am less inclined myself to talk to strangers in my hometown, even though it's something that I would do abroad, no question. Like, do you guys have anything different?
I think
that happens?
We tend to be more physically active when we travel. I feel like that's a big thing we've like observed is at home it's so easy to like get in the routine of like flopping down on the couch, which it's always good to do that sometimes too. But I think when we're in places that are like so beautiful and there's so much like nature to see or like the ocean to swim in or hikes to go on, then we definitely make it like a bigger part of our routine, like getting out and doing like active stuff like
it's definitely possible to get stuck in a routine, stuck in a rut when we're home.
Yeah.
And one of the things I like about van life is that you're always in a new location that is interesting and is new and that calls you to go out and explore and to do something with your evening. And yeah, we are pretty active just in general. Our days are pretty full when we're doing van life.
Yeah. And speaking of this notion of home, because you have a bricks and mortar home and you have Vanji and you've had quote unquote homes in the places that you stayed in for extended periods, like what does home mean to you? What makes a place home? Do you feel like you have multiple homes perhaps, or
I think for me, home is like always where our family is. So like in Southern Ontario, basically. I definitely feel like Vanji is a home in a sense. And when we left the van for the month of December and then came back in January, and it kind of felt like a homecoming in a way. It's like, oh, this feels familiar. Like this is our space. We have stuff here. But for me, like going home will always mean like going back to like the people that we know.
Yeah, we're pretty close with our families, and back in KW, like most of our friends and family are within an hour or less of where we live. We're fortunate to have that. I'm not sure everybody does, but there's always that pulls us back home. And in some ways, when we travel, we feel like, oh, we're missing out on.
We get like
the
home
FOMO. At
FOMO.
home.
Yeah,
I so
We do.
know.
Yeah.
That's funny. Whether it's van or otherwise, I know I get asked this question all the time. Are there any safety tips that you guys would share with listeners? Maybe they're a first-time traveler, maybe they're a first-time van lifer, maybe they're thinking about doing either of these things. Like, what are maybe one or two things that you do to help you feel safe and secure on the road?
Well, we can run you through our DIY van security system.
Love it. Do it.
Can we? I don't know.
Oh,
Okay,
you can't give away all the secrets.
We'll talk about the stuff that, like, if we describe it, won't increase our chances of getting robbed. Okay. So one thing that we would recommend so we won't tell you where we hide our valuables, but what we will tell you is for anybody who's like, trying to park their van securely, the biggest thing that you can do, I think, is to cover all your windows.
Yeah.
So whenever we park somewhere that we're like, because the big thing about van life is you feel vulnerable because your whole house is in a vehicle, and vehicles are notoriously like easy to rob. So you want to try to make sure that your stuff's not going to get stolen. So one thing you can do is cover up all the windows so people can't see in, right? So they can't like tell that you have stuff in there. That's a big precaution. Another thing that we did before embarking on this trip is we got all of our windows coated in anti-smash coating.
Right, you were telling me about this.
So
that's a big thing down in like LA and San Francisco. It's not as common.
Kind of hard to find someone in Kitchener to do it, but but that just means if somebody.
Is there a business that you can mention in Kitchener that did it? If
it's called Uniglass.
Uniglass,
like Zebert Uniglass or something like that.
Yeah, okay. We had to they had to specifically order in the anti-smash stuff for us, right?
Yes.
Okay. But they did a good job of it, and we haven't. Fingers crossed, we won't have to find out if it works. But so far, haven't had any run-in. But what it's supposed to do is like you can look up videos online, and it takes forever to actually break through. So the idea is that somebody would give up before they actually could smash through your windows.
Does that work for your windshield as well? I just got a ding in my windshield the other day, and I was like, "Come on!" But would that work for that area?
So yeah, we don't have the windshield.
No, you windshields are already smash proof.
They are not.
They're not chip proof. But there's glass on the outside side of your windshield, and it's actually a plasticky coating on the inside side, so that if you get in an accident, the window won't just fall into shards in front of you. It actually kind of holds itself in place. All the broken glass just holds itself exactly where it is. So you will need a new windshield, of course. And same with the anti-smash glass. Like if somebody throws a rock at your window, it will definitely shatter, but it won't allow them to get into your vehicle because the window,
the all the part keeps it in place.
All the glass just stays exactly where it is.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
So those are two big things. And then the final thing is that we like have this kind of DIY setup where we chain our doors together when we leave the van, so that even like if you were able to like kind of pick the lock or whatever of the vehicle, you physically can't open the doors from the outside, with the exception of one of our doors, which we won't reveal.
Nice.
I think in general, even for non-van life situations, I think that just being aware of your valuables, and I think the most like common thing is just being pickpocketed or something valuable just swiped when you're not looking. So just being aware of that, trying to, maybe not wear a backpack when you're in a crowded area, things like that. Or
have the person who's walking in front be the one with the backpack. That's what we do a lot.
Yeah. I think people worry about violent crime and getting shot or getting mugged, and that can happen. Like, I'm not saying that you should not worry about that. I mean, I think just contextualize that those incidents are quite rare, and more likely somebody's just trying to steal your cash and
your phone.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like in those situations they probably need it more than you do, so it's like it's okay.
Exactly. So I'd rather be like, let me transfer you and keep my phone.
Can I take you out to dinner? Like, let's help each other out here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How do you guys deal with post-trip blues? Because I know that like while you're away, there can be FOMO about home, but then when you're home, like, are you guys the couple that you've got the next trip planned to get you through the post-trip blues, or?
Yeah, I mean, we like we said, we're type A. We generally plan stuff way in advance. I mean,
We always have the next trip planned.
often we're planning at least a year in advance, and we might even have multiple trips that are kind of in the hopper for, oh, we might do this. So yeah, I think there's always an aspect of that. Like, I think we do feel the post-trip blues, but I don't know. Often it's just channeling that into excitement for whatever the next trip is going to be.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
feel like for me, normally, like when I get home from a trip, like I'm just so happy to be home and see my friends and
Yeah.
family again that I don't like feel sad, and you know, like I'm just like excited to be with everybody again. Eventually, I start getting more I don't know, like just antsy to do something else. That's maybe my
Yeah.
version of post trip blues. Like I'm so excited to be home, and like I'm really happy seeing everybody, and then eventually I like, you know, get this idea of like, well, I wonder what it's like in Guatemala. Maybe I should figure that out, you know. So that's maybe my version of it.
Love it. That's awesome. As a bonus for the listeners of the podcast, with all of my guests' help, I'm going to curate a travel playlist to share with them. And I'd love to know what's one song that either sums up your travel style or a song that reminds you of one of your trips. I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but I feel like certain trips I've taken have like a theme song that either it happened in like this moment that's just stuck in my head, or it played so much during that trip where I'm like, right, that song takes me back to that. So is there anything that comes to
definitely.
mind?
Okay, let's hear it.
I love it.
There's a
So
specific
this song
song
for this trip?
for van life in general.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
ready? 3, 2, 1.
Life
Life is a highway.
Okay.
Oh my God, yes.
Literally, that song, if it comes on, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna like go hard. I love it so much. And like we listened to it a lot on our very first van road trip in 2022. And I think for me, like, it's nostalgic. Like, my dad was a long haul truck driver when I was growing up. He still is a truck driver now. But anyway, that's like one of his favorite songs. That was very like nostalgic and kind of like reminded me of my family. We would listen to that song a lot on that was like our first big trip away from home. And I would like literally listen to that song and just like cry. And it's so silly because it's Life is a Highway. But like, yeah,
And
their van
it's
life
the Rascal
song.
Flatts version, right?
That's what I like, the Rascal Flatts.
Oh,
I know, maybe
okay.
controversial. Definitely my
No.
dad likes the original better, but anyways.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're into the last part of the podcast. It's the speed round. So in
Okay.
as few words as possible, each of you get a chance to answer the question, so you guys can each have a turn with it. But where's your next trip to? Are you allowed to say? Can you reveal?
I don't know.
This is a very interesting one for us because the answers we don't know, but we're gonna go on one.
Maybe we'll keep that a secret. You'll have to subscribe and stay tuned.
Everybody's got to subscribe to Katie and Dan in a van now. Okay. What about your favorite mode of transportation when traveling?
Trains/public transit.
I was gonna say trains.
Nice. And I feel like I know the answer to this one, but planned trips or spontaneous trips?
Planned.
Yeah. Underpacker or overpacker?
Oh, I think we might be
Overpackers.
Re-
You're like,
We
could
try
bring
not
less.
to be. We try not to be.
It's tough though with the van, because with the van, like I was the what if packer growing up. I drove my dad absolutely nuts with how much stuff I would bring in the van on our road trips. And then in like 2019, I packed with a carry-on for the first time for 5
Mhm.
weeks in Europe. Game changer. I've packed with a
Yeah.
carry-on ever since then. But with the van, I'm like, oh, I'll take the kitchen sink because I can. Like,
Yeah, exactly. But eventually the van does get full, and we're definitely
There's
at
a
that
limit.
stage.
There is
So-
a limit.
all right, most overrated destination.
Have we ever been somewhere we thought was overrated? I think we've really
Okay, maybe the Grand Canyon.
the Grand Canyon.
It's really, really, really cool, but in some people's explanations of it, it's just a completely life-changing experience. And I wouldn't say it was that for us. There's
I think-
plenty of cool canyons.
Yeah,
The Grand Canyon is one of them.
yeah. There's lots of other national parks that I think were more impressive to me.
Cool. What about the most underrated destination?
You know what? Maybe I'm just gonna throw this one out here. Slovenia.
Oh yeah, we liked Slovenia.
I really was blown away by Slovenia when we were there in October.
It was a beautiful time of year there too.
Yeah, it was gorgeous, and you don't hear a lot about it.
Nice. What home comfort do you miss the most when you're away?
In the van, maybe a shower with unlimited water.
I thought you were going to say home cooking, your mom's cooking.
Yeah, like probably the people. That's probably the true answer.
Yeah.
The people.
Just being around our friends.
Yeah.
Nice. What's the best travel advice you've received?
Ooh, that we've received.
Or maybe that you've like heard from somewhere else, but it wasn't directly.
Yeah.
TBD. Tune into
Yeah.
Katie and Dan in a van.
Clearly, we need to come up with more advice.
Yeah. I think we've learned a lot from the van lifers that have gone before us.
Yeah.
The
And
best piece of advice that you would give them.
I think I would give somebody the advice to just do it. Like whatever it is, the trip you want to do, like there's a million reasons not to go, and I think you need to look for the reasons to go and start tackling those problems one at a time.
Yeah.
You know, figuring out how to get the time off work, or how to do it in a way that's affordable to you, or to, you know, mitigate your negative impacts on the community while you're there. Like there's always going to be, it's easy to stay home. It's easy to stay in your routine, and it's hard to break that routine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go. Window seat or aisle seat?
Window.
I'm stuck at the aisle because Katie's gets the window.
He needs credit because he always sacrifices and sits in the middle so that I can have the aisle seat.
Yeah. Often I
On
get the middle
planes,
seat.
but on trains, he gets the window seat.
Nice. I like that. Trade off. Describe each of yourselves as a traveler in 3 words.
Curious,
I like that.
excited, sometimes hangry. That's honest.
That is really honest. Yeah, I'm curious is a good one, but planned, I think, has to be on the list too for me. Prepared.
Yeah.
I don't know. What else?
Thoughtful.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Nicer than
And
weird.
thoughtful. Yeah.
And what's a characteristic that makes a good travel partner, given that you guys travel together quite a bit?
I think probably I was gonna say somebody who's flexible, but I actually think the real truth is somebody who is happy to be the same level of prepared that you are. Because I think part of why we mesh so well is that we both want to be prepared. We both want to, we're both a little type A, so we both feel comfortable with that level of preparedness. I think it would maybe feel more difficult if one of us was like super spontaneous and never wanting to plan, and the other one of us was like super planned. You know what I mean? Like I think because we have the same like priorities and the same like approach, it works well.
But I would say somebody who takes an interest in what you find interesting.
Yeah.
Like trying to understand what the other person really loves and engaging in that with them, and for them to do the same to you.
Yeah.
Really enhances the experience.
Nice. And the last 2 for the speed round and for our chat today is the best gift for a traveler. And this could be a service or a product, or an experience even, I guess, as well.
I'll say like the gift again of taking an interest in whatever trip they've just been on or whatever their dream is. Being a supportive friend, I think, is the number one gift. Saying that you can, like watering their plants or helping them plan the trip, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's the number one thing that you can offer to a traveling friend.
I think so. Or along with that,
Yeah.
and this is above and beyond, but on a similar vein, to me, the like biggest gift is like coming to meet us somewhere that
Ooh,
we travel to.
going on a trip with us.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you guys, both of those are gold answers. I love it. That's such a good way. Okay, and then the last question is, what's one travel app that you couldn't live without on your travels?
Ooh, I know what it is
or
for us.
website.
It's iOverlander.
Oh yeah, for
You
Vanlife.
could not do the like van lifing that we do without iOverlander. It's this crowdsourced app where people pin places that they've slept, gotten showers, mechanics, where they've got
Free.
gas.
Well,
It's
by donation.
water.
Yeah. And yeah, we use it to find like everywhere that we're gonna park.
It's available as a website or as an app.
Yeah.
For your
I
choosing.
second this, having used it myself.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I know Overlander's big in North America. I know there's other apps for other places.
Yeah, like Park for Night. Yeah.
In Europe, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you both so much for coming on the show. This was such a fun chat to have with you today.
Thanks for having us. This was great.
Been an honor.
Really appreciate you taking the time. Oh, I hope you guys have a safe drive home from Mexico. And I can't wait to connect with you when you're back in Ontario. I'm really looking forward to that. But can you just, before we leave, let people know where they can find you online and if there's anything else that you want to add before we say goodbye?
You can follow along on our adventures on YouTube. That's the best place to find us. You can just search Katie and Dan in a van, and our channel will come up. You can find us on Instagram as well. And yeah, we just love to share our videos with you there.
Awesome. Oh, thank you guys. Safe drive home. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.